inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Today's video is obviously the first Halloween look of 2020. I did a skull look, but it's got a little bit of a zombie-esque character with all the like browns and like blown out smokiness. So I really hope you guys enjoy the video, and let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so I'm starting by putting my hair back, and I went ahead and primed my skin off of camera. I used the IT Cosmetics Gripping Primer. Now the foundation I'm using is the Pretty Fresh from ColourPop. It's probably the lightest shade that they have. It is pretty light on me, so I felt like it would go really good with this look because it's still somewhat realistic, but not like super duper stark white like a face paint would be. And I'm just buffing that all over the skin with a beauty blender. I am going to set that with a powder just to make sure it doesn't go anywhere, and the powder I'm using is the Maybelline Fit Me powder, and that is in the shade Fair, and I'm just using a little powder puff to apply that all over the face. And a little intro from my kitty cat Avery. Wanted to say hi. I'm using the Mehron Paradise face paints. They're water activated, and this is the black shade. I did dip my brush into a little glass of water to apply that, and that just activates it because otherwise it is dry and it's not quite as movable. So I'm just applying that with just a flathead brush all over the eye, and then I'm going to set that with a black matte eyeshadow. You can be messy when you're initially placing the face paint. It doesn't have to be like anything super, you know, fancy, but you definitely just want to lay it down, and now I'm just placing that matte powder on top so that it doesn't budge, especially when you're working with the eyes. You don't want it to crease, so you definitely want to set it. You can use any matte black eyeshadow. I'm using the one from the Huda Beauty palette. And I'm also using a flat paddle-shaped brush to apply that. Now I'm using a tapered, kind of pointed blending brush just to kind of fade the edges. This will help it not look quite as harsh. The idea is obviously to make it look like there is like a hollow in the eye. And so I'm kind of going and creating like a curvature on the inner and outside corners, and then I'll eventually bring the black down to the bottom to, again, make the eye look hollowed out. I ended up getting some black eyeshadow on the lower part of my under eye. I tried to wipe it away, and as you can see, it did not work. It actually ended up smearing it, so I'm able to fix it, but I didn't fix it until later on, so you'll just have to unfortunately look at it. I did bring the black down using that same paddle brush, and again I'm rounding out the inner corner to make it look hollowed out, and doing the same thing to the other eye with applying that matte black shadow to set it, and then kind of buffing in the outer edges. I am going to go in with a light brown to buff out the very, very outer corners just to make it look nice and blown out, and again kind of dead-like. So I'm going to do that in a little bit, but right now I'm just blending that again down, and I did use that big buffer brush to kind of smoke out the lower lash line as well. So that's all I'm doing, just kind of making sure it's nice and smoked out, and it doesn't have to be super like fancy and you know, it can be messy, and the messier the better in my opinion. Now I'm using a Morphe M433 brush, I believe. This is just a really nice, dense, fluffy brush, and I'm using actually that same palette with the lighter brown shade to buff out the edges, make it look again more kind of like ombre and smoky, and bring the whole look kind of together and like dead-like. I'm bringing it into the inner corner as well, and I actually use this shade to kind of contour the inner part of the nose. The more you go towards the inner part of your eye and your nose, the more hollowed out and dead-like your eyes will look, and that's kind of the goal. That's what we're going for. I did pick up my beauty blender and just try and clean up underneath the eye a little bit where I had some fallout, and also I brought the shadow a little bit further down than I wanted to, so I just went ahead and used my damp sponge. It doesn't have any additional product on it, just to clean up that area.
ground and hold your breath and feel.
Alright, so now I'm going in with brows, and I'm using that same matte black shadow that I used on the lid to carve out my brows. I'm using a flat angled brush that has a spoolie at the end. Just any eyebrow brush will do, and I'm carving out like a kind of meaner shaped brow, a little bit more higher, a little bit more angled than I normally do, and then I'm filling that in. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to flick out the inner corner to make it look angry. As you can see here, I've already done it, but I ended up removing it and doing it a little bit less harsh. So you'll see in a later clip that it just looks a little bit more natural-esque and a little bit, just not quite as harsh. Now I'm creating the hollows of the forehead and the temple. I used that matte brown that I had used on the eyes to buff everything out, and I just used like a circular kind of oval shaped brush that's like a wide angled brush, and I'm just applying the brown shadow in like a curved half circle, and I did use the matte black shadow on the very like outer edge on the inner part of that circle to make it look like it's, you know, shaded and actually like more realistic, like there's actually like a gash there or a hole. And now I just use the matte black shadow just to, you know, deepen up the shadows on the outer edge of that circle, just to make it look like it's kind of like folded skin and a little bit more protruding, and again, quote-unquote realistic, as realistic as possible. And as you can see on the inner corner of the brows, I did make those lines thinner and just a little bit like not as harsh. I am going to apply some of that brown shadow shaded area to that inner corner as well. Now I'm using just a white eyeliner to sketch out what I'm going to do with the mouth and the teeth. So I just use a white eyeliner to start with, just to give me kind of a rough sketch of where I want to go with the teeth and the jawline. And because if you go in with a black shadow here, it might be a little bit harder to clean up. Like with the white shadow, I'm still able to kind of erase it and start over if need be. So I'm using a reference photo. If you can see me looking down, I'm looking at a reference photo right now. I'll link below who I got inspiration from for this look. It's definitely different than the look I was going for, but I still liked it just the same. And now I'm using that same brush that we used for the forehead, carve out the jawline area. So I'm just bringing that down. I created nice high cheekbones, and I'm going to do the same thing to the other side as well. I'm also going to use that matte black shadow to shade that area down a little bit. We want to create that shallow, kind of deep hollow of the jaw. Create that nice high cheekbone look. Now what I ended up doing, the original goal was to create like two sides of this jawline, but I ended up creating just a overall black mouthpiece that's not quite what I was going for, but I actually liked it just the same. You'll see later on in the video, but right now I'm curving out like where I want the jawline and the mouth to be, but I ended up connecting those two to where it's just like a all one-pieced jaw with the teeth included in this like black outline, as you'll see later on. But right now I hadn't quite gotten that point yet. When I start drawing in the teeth is when I decided that I didn't quite like how it was looking. I am going to fill that area in. Right now I'm using black shadow, but I'm going to fill that in later with some black face paint. I'm using a felt tip liner here to draw in the lines of the teeth. This is just going to give me a sketch of where I want the teeth to be, trying to line it up with where my actual teeth are. And here, if you want to just leave the lines here and not have to draw the actual specific teeth, you can definitely do that. It will save you a lot of time. Drawing in each individual tooth, it's very time consuming. I will say that's the most time consuming part of this look. So if you wanted to just leave it the lines and not the teeth, it kind of gives you still that skull look without it taking 4 hours. So, but yeah, I'm just using the felt tip pen here to draw the lines and where I want it to go. You'll see that I filled in my lips with that black liner, but I wasn't I don't know why I did that, because I ended up having to just take that off and put some white face paint on it to draw the teeth in. I'm just trying to line it up so that when my mouth is closed, the teeth line up. So once I draw the teeth in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that matte black and also a combination of the brown as well and deepen up the creases between the teeth so that they kind of pop out more. That white from the teeth is going to pop out and it's going to make it look a little bit more three-dimensional. And as we draw in the teeth, you'll see I use those lines that I used as a guide. I'll use those to shade in the in-between teeth. So now I'm using the white face paint from that same palette, and I'm also using a small little detailed oval-shaped brush to draw on the teeth. I'm using a method where I have like the thicker part towards the inner part of the mouth, and then drawing like a line that's thinner and thinner towards the outer part of the jaw, giving that look of a real tooth where it looks like the root is grown in. And so I'm just going to do that with all of the teeth and go through each one. This is a time-consuming part of it. That's why I was saying if you wanted to just leave it, you know, just with the lines and not the actual teeth themselves, that would save you some time. But I do think it just brings the whole look together and just looks very realistic and cool looking. So I would recommend, if you have the time to spare, to take your time and to draw these teeth in. Some people also use the method of drawing like little houses. On the bottom it would be an upside down house, but you have like the thicker, more wide portion of the house, and then you could do like a triangular shape towards the top, and that would be effective in this process as well.
Tension, devils hide behind redemption. Honesty is a one-way gate to hell. I wanna taste consumption, breathe faster to waste oxygen. Hear the children sing aloud. It's music till the wick burns out. Be carefree lately, yeah. Just kicking up daisies. Got one too many quarters in my pockets. Count 'em like the four-leaf clovers.
I'm setting each tooth with a bone-colored white eyeshadow, just to make sure that doesn't move around. The white cream paint, you just want to make sure it doesn't crack or move around, so definitely make sure you set each tooth. And now I'm going through and I'm just deepening each in-between tooth, really helping to define each one. You can use either the matte brown or the matte black. I'm going ahead and using the black because I am going to end up filling that entire jaw with black face paint, as you'll see in a minute. But I just want to go ahead and define each individual tooth. And then if you go over it again with the felt tip liner, it will help bring, again, definition to each individual tooth. So it's just basically like a back and forth, the blending and then making it more precise and more pronounced, and then blending some more so that it doesn't look so harsh. I would recommend when you're going in and defining each tooth that you use just a very, very, very small detailed brush. The smaller that you can get it, the more detailed, defined, and like more accurate it will look. You don't want to use a thick brush. There's some times where I felt like the lines were a little bit too thick. Maybe this brush, as tiny as it was still a little bit too thick, just because it did create like thicker lines than I intentionally wanted. So those are going to be blended out later and it won't matter, but right now it looks a little weird and the lines look a little bit thick because I feel like the brush wasn't quite as precise as it should have been. I probably should have even used that same brush I used for my eyebrows because it was so thin in width that it might have created a little bit more, you know, definition.
Tension, devils hide behind redemption. Honesty is a one-way gate to hell. I wanna taste consumption, breathe faster to waste oxygen. Hear the children sing aloud. It's music till the wick burns out.
where I'm taking that black face paint and drawing in the jaw. But you'll see later on, and I think I ended up not filming it. I think my camera died, I didn't realize. But I actually am going to connect both sides so that it's actually just an all-around black mouthpiece. So right now, but I'm still creating that definition with the cheekbone so that my cheeks look really defined. But yeah, you just want to take any kind of black face paint and fill that all in. And it's all personal preference. I was just kind of winging it however I felt like it looked best. And I just wasn't vibing with it, so I ended up filling in the entire mouthpiece, like across all of the teeth. I also don't think it got my nose on camera. I think my camera died again and I just didn't realize. So my nose piece is actually using that black face paint as well. I used the felt tip liner from the eyeliner that I used to define each tooth. I used that to outline my nose and create like that hollowed out nose look. Again, just take any reference photo, you'll get an idea of like the shape of the nose that you should draw in, but I used the black face paint to make it look very hollowed and empty on the nose as well, as you'll see later on. I haven't applied any false lashes or any eyeliner yet thus far, but I do that towards the end of the video as well. I apologize I didn't get a lot of this on camera, but towards the end, I guess my camera died and I think it just skipped out on a lot of like the good stuff, so I apologize about that, but hopefully y'all are able to kind of get the gist of where I'm going with this look.
Attention, devils hide behind redemption. Honesty is a one-way gate to hell. I wanna taste consumption, breathe faster to waste oxygen. Hear the children sing aloud. It's music till the wick burns out.
So kind of what I did with the forehead, I am going to draw some defining lines above the jawline area. And that's going to give it more depth and dimension. You know, you just want to have the shading in the highlight areas like you would normally have if you were looking at a regular skull. As you can see, I used some of the black shadow underneath and above that jawline. And I ended up also taking the felt tip liner and drawing a line on the jaw as well to give the jaw definition. And that's what it looks like now, you guys. Again, I apologize it left out a lot, but I hope you enjoyed this video and you kind of got an idea of where I was going with it. So yeah, thanks for watching. Take care.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through eyes covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything.